Alright, the sun has come out. It's time to let my Geminate opinions germinate. Who wrote that? I'm not saying that. So we're diving into Frosthaven's class that comes with 2 minis. And it comes with 2 minis because it's really creepy and disgusting. The class is just like a big pile of bugs that are under a cloak pretending to be a person with a face, and they switch forms, and it's just weird. I don't want to think about creepy crawlies under the cloak, but whatever, you know. This class was very intimidating to me. You know, my first impressions of it, I was pretty afraid, because, you know, you look at all the starters, Blinkblade and Geminate are the 2 that are ranked as high complexity, and it's just scary. Like, Blinkblade, its concept is really simple. You go fast and you go slow. That's so easy. Like, we've played Gloomhaven before. Fast and slow is not a complicated thing. Conversely, Geminate's difficulty comes from basically having like artificial resistance put into the kit. You know, we've got a whole bunch of melee mode and ranged mode attacks, but you can't play your ranged attacks while you're in melee mode, and vice versa, of course. While you're in ranged mode, you can't heal yourself with Selfless Offering. You can only heal your allies. While you're in ranged mode, you can't attack something that's 2 or 3 hexes away from you with Smoldering Hatred. You have to hit something at 4 or 5. Also, you know, say you're in ranged mode, you have 4 cards left in ranged mode, but 0 in melee mode. You don't necessarily want to play Into My Embrace for the attack to pull in, because that will force you to change forms, which isn't always what you want to do. Then, you know, while we're in melee mode, we have other things, other resistances we have to overcome. Like Hornet Stinger can poison our own allies, or Flailing Tendrils can muddle them. Reckless Jab can poison and wound ourselves, and Smoldering Hatred can muddle and curse ourselves. So we can do a lot of things. You know, our bars are relatively high on the included bar graph. We do have melee and ranged damage. We do have mobility, defense, and control. But are we able to overcome all of the self-imposed resistances on Geminate? And how is it going to score on the tier list? So onto my scores, which vary a bit from the ones provided on the back of the character card. These are all scored on a scale of 1 to 5, so 3 would be average. Initiative, I'm given a 2. Movement, a 1.5. Bossing, a 2. Support, a 4. Stamina, a 4. And damage, a 2. Alright, I have no idea how long this is going to take, given that we're breaking down 2 different forms, 2 different sets of cards, but we'll give it a go. We'll see what happens. Starting with initiative at a 2, which is below average. Maybe I could have given it a 2.5 and been like slightly less below average, but I designed the graphic a while ago. So, ranged mode, we have good late actions, right? Ranged mode, we start with an 88 and a 76, and I believe a 60 is our next lowest card. I just didn't put it. These cards are all decent. They've got loss attack tops and then good movement on the bottom, which good movement is important for us because we need to be able to move 4 so that we can get exact range 3-4 away from targets, or 4-5 for Smoldering Hatred. So we need these cards, and the fact that we can go late with them is really nice. In ranged mode, if we want to go fast, that's a little bit of an issue. We can go at 18, which is not fast, and then our next fastest option after that in ranged mode at level 1 is 27, which is gross. That's like worse than Bone Shaper. And also, like, Mind Spike, while the initiative is really good, you're kind of not even playing this card for initiative. Like, the actions on it, the top action you don't want to play very frequently. It's just if you want to immobilize 3 targets to keep allies safe or protect objectives or like survive for 12 turns or something. So not a loss that I play in most scenarios. And then the bottom of this card is kind of just about doing burst damage, especially if you have Hornbeetle Carapace set up to make it an attack 4 instead of an attack 2. It's about doing burst damage. But then it also force switches you into melee mode, but you're not moving if you play the bottom of this card, so you're not positioning yourself for melee mode. So Mind Spike is a very good card, and it gives you a good bursting tool, but it's also your fastest initiative tool, which makes it very difficult to play and makes it not the best initiative card. Then looking at melee mode, going slow, we have Draining Pincers. A late move 3 jump is our slowest level 1 card. So kind of similar to the range mode, where we have a lost top attack and then a movement bottom, but unfortunately, it's just a move 3. And then we don't really want to play the loss on this, because then we don't have any late cards after it. And also 72 is not that late. You can't guarantee you'll overspeed things with 72. Then when we look at the really fast cards, melee mode can go really fast at least. We've got a 12 and a 14 at level 1, so most of the time those are going to let you go first, but we're not hitting Blink Blade or Scoundrel levels of speed here. And then we have a 20, so even if you play some of the losses on these really fast cards, we still have access to a 20 to go faster than Bone Shaper. Icebound Quills, I love this card because this top is just really, really nice, especially if you can get ice. This is really good burst damage, attack 6, pierce 2, or even just attack 5 is not bad, especially because you can pair it with the bottom loss on Reckless Jab and like attack for 10 at level 1 in a single turn and potentially stun something. So we have a really nice tool here in Icebound Quills. Unfortunately, Flailing Tendrils is basically just like a move 2 or an attack for 2 almost always for me. And yeah, so your fastest card, the fact that you're only playing it for the initiative, it hurts a little bit. Then if we look at the level up cards, there really isn't anything to note initiative wise. You know, at level 9 we can get an 11, great, but we waited a long time for it, and there's never anything in the single digits. Level 2 we can pick up a 17. This 17 runs into a very similar issue that the ranged mode 18 does, where you're not really playing this card for the initiative, you're playing it for the burst damage, but it doesn't have a force switch on it, so that does help it a little bit. And it also, like, the loss on it is a retaliate, but retaliate at 17 speed is not always going to be fast enough, so it makes it really hard to play that. In ranged mode we do finally get a 15 at level 5, but like, this card is just awful. So, like, just don't pick it up. I don't know. Like, I guess if you want a 15 speed move 2 in ranged mode, but like, you just don't. I do love the level 6 card Gerudo Therapy, but also the other level 6 card is possibly the best card in the game, so you can't really take this card. And then the other level 2 card in ranged mode is decent. We get a 23. This card's all about like moving and pushing things away. So if you're right next to something and you take one step back from it and then you push it away, now you're exact range 3-4 away from something. So this card helps you set your other cards up, and it goes at 23, which for your ranged mode is not that bad. So overall for your initiative, going late in ranged mode is fine, it's easy. But trying to outspeed things in ranged mode, good luck with your 27. It will happen sometimes, but it is definitely not consistent. In melee mode, you can relatively consistently outspeed things with your 14 and your 12, but your 14, you're probably just going to play it once or twice in a scenario because the loss is really good on it, and then your 12 is a move 2 attack for 2. If you're trying to go late on Geminate in melee mode, you can go late with Draining Pincers and then move in to get right next to something and hit it while you're in melee mode, but then you force switch into range mode, and now you're in range mode right next to an enemy. And then unfortunately, as we level up, we like, compared to like all other classes in the game, we just don't really get good initiative cards on level up. We have a lot of middling stuff. I guess this 75 speed move 4 is pretty good for Geminate, but also, do we really want our level 5 card to just be a 75 speed move 4? That's really disappointing. On to movement, we find Geminate's lowest score at just a 1.5, and it's really disappointingly, frustratingly difficult. There's just nothing going for Geminate in terms of movement. First of all, for level 1, I only pulled out 3 melee mode movement cards, which is not very good given that we're a 14 card class, so like we have 9 available cards at level 1, and the first one to highlight here is a move 3, which is literally the absolute bare minimum to be considered a movement card. It does have this all attacks targeting you gain disadvantage, which is a nice little buff to have, so you like to play this card and move in and hit things in melee and give disadvantage, so it's fine, it's good, it's just not really a lot of movement. And then, you know, we kind of talked about Draining Pincers already. You run into an issue if you want to go late and let the monsters come to you, and then you want to play a lot of movement to get into position. Now you've force switched yourself into ranged mode, and you get to play your other top attack for this turn. You could drag down and hit both of these guys with an arc or something like that. But then the following turn, you're melee in ranged mode, which means that you're forced to back up to be able to hit something like a Smoldering Hatred. You would have to play a move 3 to get into position with Smoldering Hatred here. And so it just becomes really awkward to play the movement on Draining Pincers, but we don't have any other late movement options. We do have Drag Down, which is a very, very, very nice movement ability that's like more you play it because of the supporting control factor of disarming 2 targets, but being able to move 4 jump and say, neither of these hounds are going to attack and hurt my allies this round, or they're not going to hurt me. You know, we're just going to buy time with this card. Really, really nice and useful. Really, really good in escape scenarios. Jump over, you know, disarm these guys, maybe attack with Hornet Stingers or something to switch forms, and then next turn we can play this Smoldering Hatred, immobilize both of these guys on the following turn, and then move 4 jump with that to get away. It's something that we can do. So Drag Down is very good for that, but outside of the loss on Drag Down, melee movement is just basically non-existent, which is painful. And then in ranged mode, a lot of your movement, it doesn't really matter that you have a move 3 or a move 4. We don't have any jump, and like you're playing these move 3s and move 4s to get into position to hit with exact range. So a lot of the time, you know, you might go late with Firefly Swarm just because you want to go late with it, but all you're going to do is move 1, or maybe Hail of Thorns, you're just going to move 1 so that these guys are exact range 3-4 away from you, so you can hit your Firefly Swarm or your not Smoldering Hatred, your Scarab Flight. Boom, Scarab Flight. So it just becomes a little bit like, what's the point of having all of this movement if there's nothing to use it on? And then there's no jump, there's no teleport, there's no way to get around immobilize. The initiative is bad, so, you know, something like an archer immobilizing you, you just don't always have counterplay. Things don't really get better as we level up. At level 5, we can take a move 4 jump, and then good. Now we can at least go late and move in and jump, but like that's your level 5 action because the top of this card is absolute garbage. So that's, you're not adding any power into your hand at level 5. All you're adding is like a movement option to play most of the time. Given that it doesn't force change you, that's really good, and then you get to hold on to your move and change forms, which is nice. Level 6, this is just one of the absolute best cards in the game, but both the top and bottom are really, really good. Move in and give everything -2 shield for the turn is really, really, really nice. So that card is just amazing, not necessarily for the movement. Accelerated Metabolism at level 8, we get a move 6 on melee, which is really nice and interesting, but we also get like the interesting added effect of we get to play a melee mode card from our hand while we're in ranged mode, which most of the time means that you want to play Corrosive Acid. So like this move 6 means that all you were doing was moving right next to enemies so that you could play Corrosive Acid, and then your ranged turn is going to be something like backing up and Firefly Swarming to hit them multi-target or something like that. So like we don't really get to utilize the fact that it's a move 6 unless we just ignore the fact that we're playing an extra card, unless maybe we want to move 6 and then we want to move 4 jump and move 4 jump, maybe, if we just want to escape. You know, at level 8 we have a good movement turn. I really do like the bottom of Luminous Descent at level 4, move 5 jump and stun 2 targets. It's just an upgraded version of Drag Down. The only downside is that in ranged mode you can't like move next to something, stun them, and then hit them, so you have to be able to hit them first. But move 5 jump and stun 2 targets is an amazing card. It's just unfortunately lost. And then level 4, we finally get like a really nice ranged mode card. Move 4 and Bless Self, which we need those blesses. And then the Strengthen Self is really nice, especially to get around some of the potential self muddle with like Mandible Storm or Smoldering Hatred. And then Locust Host becomes just a really important card. The move 1 on this is like really not to be underestimated, because, you know, say you're in a situation like this and you're in ranged mode and you want to hit this hound, but maybe for some reason you don't have enough movement to come all the way up here to get exact range. The fact that you can back up and push this guy then would allow you to hit Smoldering Hatred on both of these hounds. So the move 1, we really got to celebrate our move 1s where we have them. So bosses, objectives, single target damage, it's not non-existent for Geminate. It's definitely better in melee mode than in ranged mode. The problem is that it just all comes down to losses. We can go for the combo of Icebound Quills and Reckless Jab for a nice loss attack 5 or 6 up top, and then a loss attack bottom on bottom. Bottom on bottom. It's not bad. That's a really good burst turn, and like losses on Geminate do not count in the same way they do on other classes, just because you have 14 cards, so you need to play some of them. But also, it's just not consistent. After you've played those losses, if you're trying to do damage to a boss, you're like attacking for 2 multiple times with Changeling's Boon. It's kind of Hornbeetle Carapace's loss can be really nice if you want to burst out some ranged damage, but if you're trying to get it all into a single target, there's no way to hit the same single target multiple times with ranged damage except for Mind Spike. Which, you know, you can do it, but then you're force changing into melee and you're getting less effectiveness out of your Hornbeetle Carapace. So it's not non-existent, but it's not amazing. And then ranged single target damage, I guess you can muddle yourself with Smoldering Hatred, but then you're muddled. So it's like ranged single target damage is just not really a thing. And melee mode, it all comes down to losses. So if you have enough losses to get the boss down or destroy the objectives in time, then good. But outside of that, there's just nothing. Thresh and Flail gives us, you know, a much better version of Changeling's Boon as we level up. Especially you can pair it with Venomous Barbs if you're already next to the boss. Attack 2, and if they can be poisoned, then you get attack 5, attack 4, attack 3. And that's a turn that you can buff up with like power potions and items and things like that. You're just getting less effectiveness on Geminate than you would out of some other classes, but it's not bad. And then the saving grace that we have is our brittles. So the brittle on level 6 at Corrosive Acid or on level 7 for two-pronged entrapment. Very few bosses are immune to brittle, which is really good. Unfortunately, we don't really want to set up ourselves with a brittle. You could with like two-pronged entrapment bottom and Icebound Quills. Most of the time we want to set the brittle for our allies to have a nice big burst turn onto the boss. And so that's where a lot of our single target damage comes from. We can burst an objective or a boss one time, but there's just no consistency, and you are paying losses in order to get your single target damage. But enough of it talking about our damage output and being sad. Let's look at something we're quite good at. Let's move on to support, where I'm giving Geminate a 4. We have 3 different categories to support with as the Geminate. First of all, we'll start off with the simplest one. We have some healing. We have a heal 2 self card. We have Selfless Offering, where we get to heal an ally, and if there's fire, we get to give them regenerate and get a non-loss experience for ourselves, which is actually really rare and hard to do. So ideally, you would have an ally who can set fire, like Incendiary Throw from Banner Spear or Kinetic Transfer while fast from a Blink Blade, but that's not always going to happen. But we have a decent heal action here in Selfless Offering. We also get a better heal at level 4 with Luminous Descent. Heal 4, target an ally, consume light to get an additional ally, but not yourself, unfortunately, still. So you need at least 2 allies, or that's kind of useless. But then you do get to create either fire or ice, so you could use this if there's light to turn that light into fire, and then use the fire on Selfless Offering to heal again 2 turns in a row. Not the most amazing healer, but it is something that we have access to, which a lot of other teammates can appreciate. The second category we have in supporting is just stall. And this, of all of the starters, you know, a theme for Frosthaven was that it doesn't have as much crowd control as Gloomhaven did. And Geminate says, what? Yes, I do. We have a lot of really good stall options on Geminate, mostly in the form of Immobilize. So a card like Mind Spike here, immobilize 3 targets at 4/5 range. That can be, this is not my first attempt at making this, that can be really useful. You know, we back up, we tell all of these hounds, hey, you are not moving and hurting my allies this turn. We're buying time, everybody else can long rest, or we can just do some range damage and get something killed before they're able to come in and get us. You know, one of my favorite turns I ever had, I was, my Blink Blade and my Banner Spear both really needed to rest. And so my Geminate used move 5 jump to jump across the room next to Blink Blade to stun both of the targets hitting the Blink Blade, and then used Mind Spike with its top to immobilize all of the targets that Geminate itself had been fighting. And it was 5 enemies that I just said for the turn, you are not attacking us. And that was the stall and the setup that we needed to be able to turn the scenario around, get the long rest on Blink Blade, get items refreshed, and win in the end. So we're really good at that kind of emergency button. I'm going to play one of my losses, but we're going to stop everything from moving. That combo I just said with Luminous Descent, you can do a very similar thing with Smoldering Hatred. You just start next to 2 targets, immobilize them, move away, and then immobilize more. So this character is really good in especially a scenario where you have to do something like protect objectives for 12 rounds, and there are going to be infinite spawning, any scenario with just infinite spawning enemies. When there are going to be a lot of them, these nice 5 target immobilized turns can really come in handy and buy you the time you need to win. Aside from that, aside from ranged form, in melee form, we do have some of the same. Drag down is a really nice tool if we have a melee ally who has 2 enemies hitting them, then that will set us up for a really nice drag down. And if you can drag down and hit 2 enemies, that's almost always going to be worth it. So just really nice here, nice little arc. Boom, drag down, and it's a melee attack, but it's like kind of ranged because of the pattern on it, so we can actually immobilize these guys away from us. So even though it's a melee mode immobilize, we don't have to pay the penalty of still getting hit, so you can move and play drag down, which makes this card really useful. And similar with Reckless Jab, you have to poison and wound yourself, which makes Amulet of Life a pretty decent starting item, but getting to do an attack for disarm on a target. You know, one turn you can attack for disarm, the next turn you can back off and drag down, and it's like all of a sudden you've kept this enemy from moving and doing anything, and maybe drag down switches you into range mode, and then you can Mind Spike the target, and that's 3 turns in a row that you've been able to stop like 1 or 2 enemies from doing anything. You know, if you moved here, you Reckless Jab 1, then the next turn you drag down, then the next turn you Mind Spike. You could just tell enemies, no, you are not going, which is really effective, especially when you have limited numbers of enemies like big tanky beefy Algox. And then drag down bottom loss is, you know, very similar to all of these other cards, just helps you buy a turn. The third category we have for supporting is setting up our allies to do big things. So a card like Hornet Stinger is really good as a level 1. That's a very large number of poisons that you can get out. So, you know, in something like this, we would be able to hit all 3 of these hounds and dish out 3 poisons. And, you know, we would get 3 attacks for 1, which is going to be very underwhelming, especially if it's a level 1 attack modifier deck. But just being able to poison a whole clump of enemies is always really useful, and your allies will greatly appreciate it. So the third thing that we do, I don't know if I said it, we set up our allies really well. We kind of see it a little bit with Hornet Stinger, but the place where it really is shown is this, the most amazing, the best card in the game. Like, this is definitely the best ally setup card in the entire game, unless I'm forgetting one, but it's just so insane. Multi-target, attack for 2, with Brittle and Poison. Look, Brittle is just the best condition. It's better than Bane. Brittle is so insanely good. And so to be able to hit multiple targets, Brittle, and poison them at the same time, it is just the ultimate, like, hey guys, hit this one, hit this target. Oh, you were going to hit it for 5? Well, now it's attack for 6 because of the poison. You know, maybe for level 6, you probably have a decent modifier, so maybe your attack for 6 becomes attack for 8, and the Brittle just turned your, what would have been a attack for 5 into 16 damage. Thank you, Geminate. Like, it's just crazy. Literally every single class in the game can find a really good combo that they're like, ooh, I hope Geminate plays this card for me. You know, there's my favorite locked class has a big S as one of its loss attacks, and Corrosive Acid sets that up for 3 of those to turn into like attack 14. Which is just insanely cool. Every single class loves playing with a Geminate just because of Corrosive Acids, because there is nothing better for setting up your allies to do big damage. 2-prong Entrapment is just a slightly worse version of Corrosive Acid, mostly because it's lost. But instead of just like just setting things up to take big damage, you get to brittle them, and if you have light, disarm. So it has a little bit of that stall theme, but it also has the brittle, which is just the best condition to give enemies. And then the other melee card I have pulled out here is Mandible Storm, which is more for the immobilizing theme that we talked about earlier. But Alluring Pheromones can also set up your allies really well with Strengthen and Double Bless on multiple allies. Especially, throw this into a summoning class. Maybe you give Bone Shaper like 6 blesses and Strengthen on all of the skeletons. Like, go crazy. Anyway, really, really, really good for setting up our allies. The only thing that holds Geminate back from getting a 5 in support is just that you have to wait all the way until level 6 to get Corrosive Acids. Before that, your best bet is Hornet Stinger, which is just, it does not hit the same. It is not nearly as good. Level 6 and level 7, you have really nice setup. And then at all levels, you have really nice control over enemies. But if you don't take Luminous Descent, you're not really that much of a healer. And up until you get Corrosive Acids, you can set up your allies a bit. But everything changes once the Fire Nation attacks at level 6. Alright, finally we get to a category that I think I can get through quickly, hopefully, at least, with Stamina. Stamina is pretty short and simple. We get a 4 because we have 14 cards, and 14 is a very large number. It means that you can play 3 losses in a scenario, and have rested twice, and you still have like 15 plus turns of stamina left. It's kind of crazy how long you can go, especially because you don't really ever have to play any losses. Most of the losses are just like, I need something to protect myself in this situation right here. It's very possible to just like go for a really long time and just kind of do small attacks throughout a whole scenario. When it comes to like physically tanking damage, we're okay at that. We don't get to ignore negative scenario effects, unfortunately, but melee mode has access to several shields. Shield 1, Retaliate 1 with Icebound Quills. Not the best shielding, especially with you if you don't have something like maybe a heater shield, which that one doesn't give negative items, negative -1, so you can take a heater shield. Hornbeetle Carapace, move 1, shield 1. If you can get the ice, then you get shield 2 and you get experience non-loss. So especially if you have an ice setting ally, this Hornbeetle Carapace card becomes really, really good on the bottom. And then drag down, you can just use the negative conditions to help keep yourself safe. So, you're pretty incentivized with your fast cards to move in and shield up a little bit. And then you can use something like Reshape the Guys in ranged mode to loot the tokens that those guys dropped, give yourself a regenerate. After that, you can do a move 2, heal 2 self. And once you throw in a long rest, it doesn't matter if you went all the way down to 1 health. You're going to get up to like 10 or so health before you go to the next room. So up until like level 5, level 6, just regenerating yourself and move 2, heal 2. It's basically going to get you up to full before you get to a new room. And then if things are going badly, you have an emergency heal with Into My Embrace on the bottom loss. You don't really want to play it because you want that nice spammable attack that'll change you forms. But it saved my life before. And then we'd have a lot of Immobilize. So a large number of defensive options between a little bit of tanking, a little bit of holding monsters away. And then, we just get a little bit more. None of it is like the best. We're not an amazing tank. But the fact that we have 14 cards means I don't care if you crit me. I can just lose one of these cards super easily and not really think twice about it. Formless Grace gives us a self ward. 2-prong entrapment gives us another shield 1, which is a little bit of mitigation. Mandible Storm's loss gives us a really nice shield 3, as long as we can have either of these elements, ice or light. And then that pairs really, really well with the level 2 melee card, Venomous Barbs. Move in, give yourself a ton of shield, disarm yourself, and get a ton of Retaliate. And you get 1 XP whenever you retaliate, so like this card can get you like 5 or 6 plus experience in a single turn, and then the Mandible Storm shield keeps you safe. So this is a really nice fun combo to play these 2 cards together. I always love doing that. Maybe even you'd like throw like a Retaliate potion or something like that on with that and just go crazy. And then we've got a little bit of healing with Luminous Descent, although that's just allies. This card's not really relevant here, is it? A little bit of self-healing with Haruto Therapy, but it's kind of hard to take that card because the other level 6 is so good. Anyway, we can go for a long time. We have some shielding. We have some healing. Last and least, we get to damage, where we get a 2. It's not bad. The level 1 damage is quite good. The problem is just that it's all tied up in losses. We talked about the Icebound Quills Reckless Jab combo. get to attack for a 10 in a turn as long as you have ice for Icebound Quills. That's very nice. That's a very nice turn. Hornbeetle Carapace, you get to add 8 damage to your next 4 ranged attacks, and then we've got a lot of ranged attacks that have decent loss options, like Hail of Thorns, hit all enemies in range 2, so this would become attack for 4 on up to 4 targets. Or Firefly Swarm, if you can get the fire, this becomes a 3-target attack 6 if you buff it up with the Hornbeetle Carapace. It's possible to play that on the same turn you play Mind Spike Bottom and get all 4 charges of that 8 extra damage out in a single turn. You get 3 attacks for 6 and an attack for 4. That is not bad at all. Smoldering Hatred gives us a high base damage attack. We can get a 2-target attack for 4. We just have to curse and muddle ourselves, which is painful, and that's definitely going to hurt your damage output. It really hurts when you just instantly draw that curse, and it's like, okay, why did I even do this to myself? You just wasted your own turn, but it's just kind of something that happens sometimes. Draining Pincers, decent damage loss, especially at level 1. The problem with all of this is just that none of these cards scale to the point where monsters are having 20 health in every scenario. All of these level 1 cards are very, very good against level 1, 2, and 3 monsters. But if you're playing increased difficulty, it does not take very many levels before things really, really outscale you. And you kind of run into a similar issue as the Tinkerer, where it's just all the damage is tied up in losses, and there's just no consistent output. And this is like, it's made even worse by the level up cards, except for Corrosive Acids, because I would never say anything bad about that, and it's amazing. But the level 2, this is pretty decent, consistent damage output. We can attack with the bottom and get out of poison. Pair that with Changeling Boon, we get attack for 2, attack for 3, attack for 3. It's a pretty decent turn, as long as we can stay safe enough to play it. Mandible Storm, multi-target attack for 3, but then you muddle yourself, so you're hurting your own damage output after that. Thresh and Flail, very nice single target turn, but it's a loss, so then it's gone. Dragonfly Surge, not really very nice, but it's okay damage. Attack for 6 and wound the target with advantage maybe, or use the bottom to add Pierce and give yourself advantage. That Pierce and advantage is really, really important paired with something like Firefly Swarm, but then if you're doing the Firefly Swarm loss, you're hoping that the monsters haven't moved and they're still in this triangle position come 50 initiative, which is just... no. And you have to poison yourself for it. It's like, come on, like, why am I having to work so hard to do like such suboptimal damage? And then you hit level 6 and you get Corrosive Acids, and it's just, can I just play this card every turn, please? Just every turn? Because nothing comes anywhere close to the damage output that Corrosive Acids gives. Which is a little bit upsetting. If we just take a quick glance at the other level up cards, this is a loss attack for 2. So, I guess Hornbeetle Carapace can buff it up, but still, it's not super exciting. Luminous Descent, no attacks. Chitinous Horde, no attacks. Formless Grace, no attacks. Gerudo Therapy, it has attacks, but it's like, you're playing this card because you want the bottom move and immobilize multiple targets, not because you want the attack 2s. Alluring Pheromones, we finally, at level 7, we have a multi-target non-loss attack for 3. Single target attack for 4, multi-target attack for 3 with some Pierce. It's just, there's just no super amazing damage. There's nothing that sticks out here and says, this is going to be a really nice damage output card, except for Corrosive Acids. Alright, I've not been in the greatest mood. My grandmother passed away a couple days ago. She was 91. She had cancer for a year, so a couple years. We knew it was coming, so she had a big, huge family. Everybody loved her. Great woman. Her suffering is over. It just has me feeling melancholy, and Geminate doesn't help. So it's time to have just a complaining session about Geminate. So it's a 14 card class, which means they very obviously wanted to put a lot of power in the losses and not consistent power. The problem with that is that 14 cards means that you last a really long time before you rest, which means you don't get to play your cards super frequently. As you level up, you add stronger cards, theoretically. But because you don't get to rest as much, you don't get to play your stronger cards as much. It becomes even worse when you want to like specialize in a certain form. For example, the Mandible Storm Venomous Barbs double loss combo where you move in and shield and retaliate is really, really good. But if we take both of these two cards as our level up cards, then we're sitting in a situation where, you know, we're a level 3 class, but all of our ranged mode cards are still level 1. And so they haven't gotten any better. So half of the time we haven't gotten any better. And these cards are okay for damage. Attack 2 poison, attack 3 immobilize is a decent turn, but you know, the best part about this is when you're going to play the double loss combo, but then that's a double loss combo, and then your entire class is back to being a level 1 class. And then this issue happens the whole time. The most effective part of Thresh and Flail and Luminous Descent are their losses, and then you're back to being a level 1 class. And then Chitinous Horde and Formless Grace are just the two worst cards in the game. These cards should not exist. There's no point in reading them. They are awful. I guess the move 4 Ward Self is okay, but that's not adding any power to your hand. Level 6 cards are amazing. Like, you can take either of these and you'll be happy, except not really, because Corrosive Acid is so much better than Haruto Therapy. But Haruto Therapy at least is like useful. So it's really an issue up until you hit level 6. And thankfully, we can solve this issue in our scaling with the attack modifier deck, right? That's a really brilliant part of the balance in Gloomhaven, is that we can go to the attack modifier deck to get stronger, even though our hand isn't getting any stronger. So what the heck happened here? Where's the strength in the modifier deck? Maybe it's not entirely accurate. There are a few things that we have going for us. First of all, we get the coolest perk that any class has, Crit Brittle Self. Really cool to add an extra crit to your deck, especially because you also can self-strengthen with Changeling's Boon. Or not strengthen, you can self-strengthen with Into My Embrace Bottom, but Changeling Boon gives you another Bless, is the word I'm looking for, which puts 3 crits in your deck, which is kind of cool. Unfortunately, it's just like base attack 2, base attack 3, base attack 2, base attack 3, so we're adding crits, but, you know, hopefully we don't crit on our attack for 1 for Hornet Stinger, and then brittle ourselves and lose the scenario because of that. So it's a cool card. It's just not the best. And then these 4 perks replace a 0 card with a +1 poison and replace a 0 with a +1 wound. No complaints, no notes, very good perks there. Replace a -2 with a 0 card. It's fine, but kind of, you know, we just talked about the scaling. Geminate really needs a lot of its scaling through its attack modifier deck, because we're always playing these cards that were designed to be consistently weaker. So we need our strength in our modifiers. And it's just an average. It's an average modifier. And then we have the worst remove -1 perk in the game. I'm pretty sure that that's accurate, because this is just awful. Replace a -1 with a +0 element to element. I always take these early because you want to remove as many negatives from your deck as you can, but then you just don't get to do anything with it. Like, elements are already just a really weirdly designed part of Geminate, because you mostly only set elements with losses, and then, you know, when you consume them, you do something like you get 1 shield or you get 1 extra damage, and it's just, it's not worth it. And so you need your allies setting elements for you, and then if your allies are setting elements, maybe you randomly get lucky and draw an element to element. It just doesn't happen very frequently. It doesn't happen frequently at all. And so you remove your -1 and replace it with a 0, and it's just really, really underwhelming. Really, really, really awful. I hate this perk a lot. Then the other big problem that we have, you know, we get to add these cool cards like +1 poison and +1 wound, but we also muddle ourselves with Smoldering Hatred, and we muddle ourselves with Mandible Storm. And so we need our attack modifier, we need it to be, we need our modifier deck to be good, because we have to spam weaker attacks, but then we need it to be even better than good, because a lot of our attacks we're doing at disadvantage anyway. And So you just don't even get to draw your +1 poison because you drew it at a disadvantage and you get a 0 or a -1 instead. And we still don't even get to remove 2 of our -1s. So like, it's just a kick in the teeth. Like, on top of replacing the -1s with horrible cards, we still have 2 -1s left in the deck. We get to take out the other 2 zeros and replace them with Rolling Pierces, which very rarely are going to actually do anything for you. We can add 2 +1 push 3s, which, okay, we'll add this later. This is just the most infuriating part of the class. We can add +1 Rolling Regenerate Self, which that part by itself is fine. So why does Blinkblade get +2 Rolling Regenerate Self? Like, why do we just have a purely inferior card to a class that's spamming attacks when it's so hard for us to do attacks? We get Ignore Negative Scenario Effects, but we get no other bonuses on top of our negative scenario effects. And then our other worded perks are really cool. When you short rest, you can remove a negative condition from an ally. But this one especially, once each scenario when you would give yourself a negative condition, something like Smoldering Hatred to muddle yourself, you can get the bonus without having to give yourself the condition. And then definitely one of the coolest perks, whenever you perform an action with a loss, you can discard a card from your hand to recover something from your discard pile of an equal or lower level. So you start with 7 melee, 7 ranged cards, you play a loss on either form, it doesn't matter, you discard 1 ranged card, you pick up a melee card, and then you went to 6 and 8 in your first rest cycle, and you get an extra turn out of it. But that's not always something that you want to do, because sometimes if you're just lasting so long, then you don't get to do your cool things because it's even longer before you rest. And so it's just bad. It's just bad, and it feels even worse because you muddle yourself all the time, and then you draw your cool things while you're at disadvantage, and you just get frustrated. You just get frustrated playing Geminate. And a lot of it is because of this attack modifier deck and these stupid 0 element to elements. Ugh. So looking at the final deck, it's actually not that bad. We get to take out 4, or we only have 4 zeros in the end, since we get to take out all 6 of our starting ones, and then only 2 -1s. So 6 neutral or negative cards, which is not that bad for a finalized deck. The problem is just that it takes so many cards to get there, so many perks to get there. You know, it takes us 8 just to get our deck into a good spot, and then we also really want these worded perks, like getting to discard the card to get them back, so that's like 11 perks that we need. You know, you're not really playing the class until you take the Crit Brittle Self, because you got to live on the edge and just hope that you don't brittle yourself at a really bad time. So that's what, a 12th perk that we really want. You really want these rolling +1 regenerate selves, so that's what, 14 perks, and it's like, how long are you playing the class before you get 14 perks? So it becomes a good deck. It's just frustrating to compare to something like Banner Spear, who gets +2 with their push. It's only push 1, so maybe this card's, you know, it's pretty even, like push 1 versus push 3, +1 versus +2. I still prefer Banner Spears. And then Blinkblade is just Isaac's favorite child because it gets rolling +2s like for no good reason. It would be way better for Blinkblade to have weaker because it gets to do so many attacks. So I'm fully convinced. I don't know why nobody talks about this. It's probably because I just made it up. I'm fully convinced that when they sent the characters to playtesters, they accidentally mislabeled some of the files, and so they kept getting the feedback of Geminate's attack modifier deck feels really weak. And every time they got that feedback, they're like, okay, we'll add another rolling +2 to Blinkblade. I don't know why everybody's saying it's so weak. It's just because they had the name switched on the files. It has to be what happened. Alright, and we're moving on to my recommended changes, and to fit with the theme of the video, we are going to be here for a very long time, so strap yourself in. We're going to start with just a simple one. I mean, it's just a really frustrating part of playing the class. Form changes are not abilities. They work just the way elements do, where you only get to infuse an element if you performed a part of the card. So if you're playing Into My Embrace, you only get to switch from ranged into melee mode if you perform the attack. So if your allies go fast and they kill the final target, you don't get to attack, you don't get to switch to melee, you're stuck in ranged mode. If a priest goes faster than you and disarms you, you don't get to attack. You don't get to switch back into melee mode. This happens with Selfless Offering. Priest goes faster than you and immobilizes you. Or the archers immobilized you on the previous turn at 29. And it's like, okay, you're in the planning phase. You're sitting here. You would love to switch into melee. You've got a whole bunch of melee cards and no ranged cards, but you simply cannot play Selfless Offering to switch. So what do you do? You know, if you don't have Into My Embrace, then you don't have any other top form changes and you're stuck. Maybe something's in range and you can Mind Spike, but maybe all of the enemies are right up next to you, and so you can't use Mind Spike to switch because nothing's at exact 3-4 range. You can't use Selfless Offering to switch because you're immobilized, and it's awful. You just feel horrible. So I wish that form changes were abilities in and of themselves. Dragonfly Surge, you can always give yourself advantage on your remaining attacks, advantage and pierce on your remaining attacks. You do have to poison yourself, which is unfortunate, but at least you can always play that ability, I guess, to get your form change off. Yay. That's what I want in my level 3 card. This ability is pretty good, but the initiative's awful, so ugh. Alright, so no matter what, I want that changed about Geminate. And then I've got 2 other suggestions that's probably a take one or the other, but not both. First, we'll start with the easier one. Is to get rid of these trash perks, these trash modifiers, and instead make them replace a -1 with a 0 brittle. We are the class that has brittle, the starting class that has brittle, the coolest new condition in all of Frosthaven, and so, like, let us use it. Like, we have to wait until level 6 to get our brittle, and then we become really, really strong and really, really cool, although it kind of all just revolves around corrosive acids at that point. But we get to play with brittle, which is really, really cool. So if we had some brittle in our attack modifier deck, it would add some damage. It would move further into that aspect of where we're setting up our allies we're setting up the pins for them to knock them down. That would be really, really nice. And honestly, I do not think that it would be too overpowered to replace these, which are almost never useful, with brittles instead. The other way that I would potentially introduce brittle to an earlier level Geminate would be through a combination of loss effects. So, you know, we could take Feeding Frenzy and Reshape the Guise, these loss effects that just aren't that good. Like, they're kind of interesting, but they're just not good. Replace them with something different. So first of all, I would give the Geminate class, I would give it its own, I would give it a special token that's cut down in the middle and has a melee form and a ranged form on the special token. Then when you play the melee form loss, when you hit a target, you can mark them with your melee mode token. Then all attacks coming from that target hitting the Geminate have disadvantage. So they have permanent disadvantage, but only if they're hitting you. Helps you be tankier while you're in melee mode. Nice. You hit a target, they have disadvantage against you. Love it. Ranged mode would be the same. You give the target the marker, and then all of your attacks against them gain advantage, which the nice part about that is, like, your ranged attacks don't ever hit the same target more than once. Your ranged good losses are AoE, whereas, like, melee mode has hitting the same target multiple times with Changeling Boon and Thresh and Flail. So you're only getting the advantage on subsequent hits if you mark them first with range and then you switch to melee form to hit them. I would also add a little bit of text to the end of either of these cards where when you play one of their loss effects, you can immediately at the end of your turn play the other one to perform its loss ability from your hand. That way it would just only take one to set up both of the losses, which I think would be pretty cool. And then have the added benefit that when one target has both of your marks, you can take the tokens away to either make that target suffer some damage or let you perform brittle any target in range 3. And so it's forcing you to hit the same target, give them both of your tokens. You know, maybe if you kill it while they have both tokens, then you still get to brittle a target. You know, I just think it would be really cool. It fits because you get the muddling for a little bit of extra tankiness in melee. You get the extra damage in range. It's incentivizing that you're, like, marking the same target and then kind of focusing them down, kind of like the Hatchet's favorite a little bit, or kind of like the Deathwalker's marking shadow mechanic. And then you get to play with your brittles early on, and it's incentivizing you to, like, play these losses. and then they're combined so it has like the two forms working together. I just think it would be cool. And I would also give the class level 5 cards. I'm really curious that it goes straight from level 4 to level 6 and it just completely skips over level 5. I don't know why that happens. I've been at this a long time. I'm over 6 hours of recording and I still have to do all the editing, so let's throw Geminate on here and make this fast. Now, if you've been here the whole time and didn't just skip ahead, first of all, what's wrong with you? Second of all, it's been fairly negative up until this point, so I think it's pretty safe to assume we're not going to be in the top 3 tiers. We're going to be a bottom 3 tier class. We, however, are not sometimes D, sometimes A. I think that is reserved for the Bone Shaper. That's the only class that's going to be there, which means that we are going to be in B tier. B for bad, but not really. We're not B for bad. So when do we pick Geminate? You pick Geminate if you're the kind of person that has some real life lessons you need to learn. Why do we have a rolling +1 regenerate and Blinkblade gets a rolling +2 regenerate? Don't worry about it. Comparison is the thief of joy. Love yourself for who you are, not for who other people are. Life just isn't fair. And so if you come into the game expecting for everything to be fair, it's not fair. Geminate will teach you that things aren't fair. Geminate's the kind of class that'll say, hey, do you want to hit an extra target and muddle yourself and curse yourself? Just don't draw it right then. Or do you want a rolling crit, extra crit, brittle self? Just don't draw that at a time where the brittle self is going to mean that you die. Geminate's going to teach you those kinds of lessons. We're going in B for bad, but we're not bad. And the classes are going to be ranked in strength within the tiers, which means closer to B is better. And I am going to put Geminate ahead of the Drifter. I just think that early game, they're pretty similar. Level 1, the classes are pretty similar in strength. Geminate is quite strong with a lot of really good losses. As you level up into the mid game, Drifter's like a little bit better, but it's kind of falling off, whereas Geminate's just not really improving very much from its mid game level cards. But then once you hit level 6 and you get Corrosive Acids, you just become the best supporting class in the game, the best class to set up your allies for success. And so if you were trying to design the strongest possible four-member party composition, it's entirely possible that Geminate is in that strongest foursome, whatever you want to call it. The level 9 cards are really good, the level 8 cards are really good, the level 7 cards are decent, and Corrosive Acid is just the best card for setting up Poison and Brittle on multiple enemies of anything in the game. So Geminate definitely has its roles, it has its things that it can do well. It's going in B tier. We're not B for bad, we're B for bro. Corrosive Acids is really good.